Imagine being wrongfully arrested by police, and the very next week, you're the judge deciding their fate. This is the true story of a woman who turned injustice into a powerful lesson for the world. Stay tuned to find out how she did it. Get out of the car. The voice sliced through the morning air, loud and aggressive, as two white police officers approached a calm, well-dressed black woman seated in her parked vehicle just outside the county courthouse. She didn't flinch, didn't argue. She looked up, startled but composed, as any law-abiding citizen would be when confronted unexpectedly. Her name was Vanessa Thompson. She wasn't speeding, not breaking any law, not causing any disruption. She was simply parked, preparing for the busy court day ahead, reviewing legal documents spread out neatly on the passenger seat. But to the officers, her presence didn't sit right. Something about her being there, so poised, so professional, yet so black in their eyes, made her suspicious. That's what they claimed when they demanded to see her ID. Vanessa responded respectfully, stating that she was a legal professional, even showing them official court documents. Documents with her name on them, with her title on them. But the officers didn't look closely, didn't listen, and didn't believe her. It was as though the very idea of a black woman being associated with the law in a position of power didn't compute for them. What they saw was not a judge or an officer of the court, but a threat, a suspect, someone to dominate. Their tone escalated. They asked what she was hiding, why she was lying, even though Vanessa remained calm and cooperative. Moments later, without reason, they pulled her from her car, handcuffed her tightly, and pushed her against the hood. She said nothing, not because she was weak, but because she knew the law better than they did. She knew this moment, this injustice, wasn't just another instance of police overreach, it was an opportunity. Passers-by watched in disbelief as the woman, dignified and dressed for court, was hauled away in the very place she worked to uphold justice. But Vanessa didn't shout. She didn't cry. She didn't resist. She knew her time would come. And come it did. What the officers failed to realize was that the woman they just humiliated was Judge Vanessa Thompson, one of the youngest and most respected judges in the district, a Harvard Law graduate, a lifelong fighter for civil rights, and a symbol of hope for so many young black professionals trying to break barriers. Her rise had not been easy. Born and raised in the Deep South, Vanessa knew the sting of racism early. She grew up in a community where police sirens often meant fear, not safety, where the color of your skin could overshadow the strength of your character. But she refused to let that hold her back. She worked hard, outperformed expectations, and earned a full ride to Harvard Law, where she focused her studies on civil rights and criminal justice reform. Her entire career had been about giving voice to the unheard and holding power to account. When the officers arrested her, they weren't just humiliating an innocent woman. They were attempting to erase decades of hard work, trying to assert dominance where it was unwelcome. After her release, Vanessa didn't seek revenge. She didn't turn to the media or the streets. Instead, she did what she always did. She trusted the system, determined to make it work the right way. She filed a formal complaint. Quietly, professionally, she requested the officer's body cam footage, which soon revealed exactly what she had experienced. Not just a misuse of power, but open mockery. The video showed them laughing, saying she was too well dressed for this area, joking about how she must be pretending to be someone she's not. Their words dripped with racism and disbelief, and the footage quickly spread through internal channels. When senior officials saw the video, they were stunned, not just at the behavior, but at the target of their abuse. Within days, the department launched an internal investigation, and the officers were removed from street duty. But justice wasn't done yet. In a twist that felt too poetic to be real, the case against the officers, now facing misconduct charges, was assigned to the bench of a familiar judge, Vanessa Thompson, the very woman they had wrongfully arrested. When she walked into that courtroom in her robe, shoulders high, the room went silent. The two officers, seated at the defense table, looked up and froze. Recognition hit them like a wave of shame. Their smug expressions vanished. There she stood, their victim, now their judge. Vanessa didn't gloat. She didn't raise her voice. She presided over the proceedings with professionalism and grace, allowing the prosecution to present the facts, the footage, and the statements. She ensured the trial was fair and impartial, even choosing to recuse herself from the final sentencing, to maintain judicial integrity. But before stepping down, she made one final statement, calm, composed, but unforgettable. She said, "This is not about me. It's about a system where assumptions replace evidence, and power is misused when left unchecked. Today's hearing is a reminder that justice wears no uniform and favors no color." Her words echoed far beyond the courtroom. Both officers were found guilty of misconduct. One resigned before sentencing. The other was suspended and ordered to complete a full course in racial sensitivity and community policing. As for Judge Thompson, her story went viral, not because she was a victim, but because of how she responded. She didn't just demand justice, she modeled it. Her poise under pressure, her belief in the system even after it failed her, and her refusal to meet hate with hate made her a national symbol of dignity, strength, and hope. In interviews that followed, she spoke not of punishment, but of progress. "What happened to me happens to countless others who don't wear a robe, who don't have a platform. I was lucky. I could fight back. But we need to change the culture so that no one ever has to." And with that, she continued her work, walking back into courtrooms not as a victim, but as a leader, reminding everyone who crossed her path that justice isn't a privilege. It's a right, and no amount of prejudice can silence the truth when it's spoken with courage. Judge Vanessa Thompson is no ordinary woman. She is the kind of person whose life story feels like a chapter torn straight from the pages of a civil rights history book, filled with grit, intelligence, and unshakable purpose. Born in a small southern town, Vanessa grew up in an environment where racial slurs were whispered under breaths and shouted from passing trucks, where the color of her skin was often seen as a limitation instead of a part of her identity, to be respected. But even from a young age, she refused to let that narrow view define her. She was the girl who always sat in the front row of class, the one who raised her hand not just to answer questions, but to challenge unfair rules, to call out injustice even when it was uncomfortable. Her parents, hard-working and deeply principled people, taught her that education was her weapon and discipline was her armor. They didn't have much money, but they gave her something more powerful, a belief that her voice mattered. That belief carried her through every moment of adversity. By high school, she was already a force, winning debate championships, writing essays about justice, and organizing community events to register voters in neighborhoods no politician dared to visit. She earned a scholarship to Harvard, where her Southern accent and confident posture stood out in lecture halls filled with privilege and polish. Some students dismissed her at first, but that didn't last long. Vanessa graduated with honors from Harvard Law School. Her thesis focused on the racial bias in policing and sentencing, a subject she knew not just from books, but from watching neighbors and friends fall victim to a system that rarely gave them a second chance. After law school, she returned to her home state not to escape her past, but to confront it head-on. She became a public defender, then a prosecutor, and within a few years, her name echoed in legal circles as someone who didn't flinch in the face of power and didn't back down from a tough case. Her courtroom was known for one thing above. After her wrongful arrest, Judge Vanessa Thompson didn't raise her voice, didn't scream in protest, and didn't let her emotions boil over in the street because she didn't need to. She had spent her entire life learning how to navigate injustice with intelligence, strategy, and grace, and this moment was no different. Though humiliated, handcuffed, and pushed against the hood of her own car outside the courthouse where she served justice, every day she remained composed. She knew that yelling wouldn't change hearts and minds, but evidence and law could. So, after being released and quietly walking away with dignity, she did what she had always believed in. She trusted the legal process, even when it had just failed her. She went home, gathered her notes, and filed a formal complaint against the two officers who had arrested her without cause. It wasn't revenge. It was accountability. Days later, the Internal Affairs Unit began their investigation, and when the officers' body cam footage was reviewed, It revealed more than just a routine stop gone wrong. It exposed a deeply rooted prejudice dressed in authority. The video showed the officers mocking her, laughing as they guessed whether she was pretending to be someone important, sneering that she was too well dressed for this area, and dismissing her calmly spoken explanations with arrogance and disbelief. Their tone dripped with condescension, their language with bias. They never once considered that the woman in front of them could be someone powerful, let alone a judge. When their superiors watched the footage, they were visibly stunned. Not just by the blatant racial profiling, but by the target, Judge Vanessa Thompson, one of the most respected and admired legal minds in the district. Immediately, an internal investigation was launched. The officers were pulled from street duty, pending the outcome, and whispers of the incident began to circulate through the courthouse and the community. But fate, or perhaps justice, had another twist to offer. The very next week, as the official misconduct case against the officers was prepared, the court assigned a judge to preside over it, and that judge was none other than Vanessa Thompson herself. The woman they had wrongfully arrested was now the person in charge of ensuring that their actions would be fairly examined and judged, under the same legal standards they had so clearly ignored. When she stepped into the courtroom that day, the atmosphere was electric. The officers sat at the defense table, visibly uneasy, their former confidence drained from their faces as realization set in. She didn't smirk. She didn't retaliate. She presided with the same calm authority that had earned her respect for years. Every question she asked the courtroom was packed wall to wall, the kind of full where even people with no direct connection to the case came just to witness history unfold. Because what was about to happen was more than just a legal proceeding. It was a powerful reckoning. Every reporter, every lawyer, every curious citizen knew they were about to see something rare and profound, justice looking injustice in the face. As Judge Vanessa Thompson walked in, her presence commanded silence. She moved with dignity, each step echoing louder than any gavel, her black robe flowing like the weight of justice itself. When she took her seat at the bench and calmly adjusted her glasses, she didn't need to raise her voice. Her presence was enough. The two officers who once smirked and mocked her now sat stiffly at the defense table, their faces drained of color, eyes avoiding hers, the gravity of the moment pressing down hard. One leaned toward the other and whispered, "Oh no, that's her." But there was no turning back. Judge Thompson struck her gavel and said, "Let the record show that. This court is now in session." The room held its breath. She didn't let emotion overtake her. She didn't use the bench as a weapon for personal revenge. She stayed composed, allowing the law, her lifelong tool, to do its work. The prosecution began by introducing the body cam footage, and the screen lit up with the harsh, undeniable truth. The court watched as the officers ignored her identification, dismissed her calm explanations, and escalated a non-incident into a violent and humiliating arrest. Their words played clearly: sarcasm, racial undertones, and a complete disregard for protocol. The gasps in the courtroom weren't just from the public. They came from legal professionals, colleagues, and even seasoned officers who had never witnessed such blatant disrespect towards someone of her stature, and more importantly, someone so obviously undeserving of the treatment she received. But Judge Thompson didn't flinch. She watched the footage again, not as a victim reliving trauma, but as a judge assessing the facts. When it came time to deliver a decision about her involvement, she did what only a person of true integrity would do. She recused herself from the final sentencing. She knew that for justice to be respected, both officers, despite their initial confidence and pride in their position of power, were found guilty of misconduct, their actions undeniable in the face of the body cam footage. The punishment was swift and clear. They were suspended without pay. One of the officers, unable to face the fallout and the weight of his actions, chose to resign quietly, no longer able to carry the title of officer after what had transpired. The other, however, faced a different path, ordered to undergo a full racial sensitivity training program and to issue a public apology. The sentence wasn't just about punishment, it was a reflection of the systemic issue at hand, a reminder that ignorance, bias, and abuse of power would no longer go unchecked. But in the eyes of Judge Vanessa Thompson, this was never about getting back at the officers. It was never about vengeance. It was about creating a space where justice wasn't just an idea, but a living, breathing force that could correct its own missteps. After the trial, Vanessa found herself the subject of national admiration. News networks, legal panels, and media outlets couldn't stop talking about her composure, her dignity, and her unwavering belief in the legal system, even after it had failed her. Her story spread like wildfire on social media, not only because of the terrible injustice she had faced, but because of the way she had responded, without shouting, without seeking personal revenge. She took the high road and used the very system that had attempted to break her down to teach a lesson that resonated far beyond the courtroom. People across the country stood in awe of her strength. Vanessa had transformed what could have been a personal tragedy into a beacon of hope for change. She didn't let the officers' actions define her. She didn't let hatred shape her future. Instead, she stood firm in the belief that, even in the face of adversity, the system could work if we had the courage to make it work. During her interviews, she spoke of the urgent need for police reform, not as an angry person, but as someone who knew that true justice would require the collective effort of everyone: police, citizens, lawmakers, and legal professionals. She wasn't interested in tearing people down, but in lifting up the system that could elevate everyone. Vanessa's viral moment wasn't just a victory for her. It became a rallying cry for all those who felt their voices had been ignored, their rights violated, their power stolen. She spoke of racial justice with a clarity that cut through the noise, urging society to confront the uncomfortable truth that justice was still a privilege, not a guarantee, for far too many people. In her final words to the court, she left a message that echoed far beyond the four walls of the courthouse. A lesson for the officers who had arrested her, for the people who had witnessed the case unfold, and for anyone who had ever been wronged. You can put cuffs on my hands, but you can't chain justice. I hope this case reminds every officer that power must be used with wisdom, and that one day, the person you judge may be the one judging you. Those words left a lasting impression, a reminder that the law exists not to serve the powerful, but to ensure that power is held accountable. Vanessa's grace, strength, and unyielding pursuit of justice inspired millions, showing that even when you're wronged, you can rise up and be a force for change. Her story went from a local news story to a national movement, reminding everyone that justice is not about revenge, it's about transformation, accountability, and the belief that one person can change the world by standing firm in their principles. Her journey continued as she became a voice for systemic change, speaking on panels, advocating for reform, and making sure that the conversation about racial justice and police accountability never stopped. And for all those who had suffered in silence, her words were a beacon of hope, showing them that they too could stand up, speak out, and make a difference. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share this video. Let's keep the conversation going. Because real change starts with awareness, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful true stories.